I'm your moderator. I'm Michelle Billick, and so I'm going to just let all participants know if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and I will be asking Al and Carrie. So Al and Carrie, we got a first question. It's from Jackie. Jackie says, Al, I wonder if you have any advice on how to help programs and organizations do better in understanding the importance of peer experience. I've been advocating for some time, but it falls on deaf ears. I'm a professional now, but have lived experience, and I see how important it is, and I feel frustrated in my inability to be heard.
Yeah, that's a really tough question. I've been asked that before. And, you know, I think if you have your executives ear, if you have your managers ear, bring in, and I'm not saying this for my benefit or for Carrie's benefit, but bring in a professional trainer, a peer engagement trainer, lived experience trainer to talk to the entire organization about changing the thinking and the perspectives of people who are lived experience. We all know, you and I know, and all of us on this program today, webinar today, know that we think differently, and it takes a while sometimes to bring people together to totally understand and have mutual respect. It takes time for the person with lived experience to learn how to respect the co-workers, and it takes the same thing to have people in the organization respect people with lived experience for what they bring to the table. And I think there needs to be an education, a higher level of education. Sure, there are some going on now, but there needs to be a higher level of education brought to organizations to really see the value of people with lived experience. And I think that's a way to do it. Or if you can, as a person with lived experience, engage the voice and you know, have the organization, have the management look at ways of finding things on the internet. If you can't bring somebody in, of really learning about who people with lived experience are and the value that they have. And it's going to take a really team effort to get there, because you may be one voice out of many, and so you're going to have to keep banging the drum, keep banging that drum, and don't give up on it.
Thanks, Al. Carrie, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say too, when we're looking at that, really taking a look in almost like an analysis to say, what will be so important to us about having somebody with lived experience on our team? And what are the great things that I can bring forward? Because often when we're talking about lived experience, we're still talking about our frustrations, not including it, because we have tremendous feelings around that and how valuable it is. So now let's flip that and say, what is the huge benefit that we have of having people with lived experience? How can they relate to people differently? How can people that are in your program speak to those people making the decisions? Have a lived experience advisory board or an advisory board of the people that you're supporting, and get them to come forward and have a discussion about how they would see the benefit of having somebody on the team with lived experience supporting them. Information. Bring that D and to the different people, because lots of times we get into these conversations or thought processes about data, it's about funding, we can't afford this. So let's look at how we can include this and what is the value to the very people we are paid to support. Get their voices saying how it will affect them by having somebody who gets it.
Yeah, and also one last word is by your work. Give them a really good example of the power of lived experience through your work and through your interactions with the participants in the programs. That is one step that will, you know, raise the expectations of people with experience.
Good, thank you. So I have a question for both of you. On our session, the lived experience session yesterday, we were talking about the tremendous accomplishments that people with lived experience of homelessness have made to the sector, and that statistically it has been shown that you know, there's a high level of people with lived experience who actually work in this sector. But that being said, I still think that there are a tremendous amount of barriers that many of us face, you know, in, I would say, like the hierarchy that is programs and services and program service delivery. What are some of the barriers that still remain where we are not seeing or hearing lived experts and having them at the table.
Carrie, you want to take it first?
Sure. I see that, you know, we're starting to talk at the government levels. We're starting to talk at some of those higher tables about including people with lived experience. And I think it's vitally important that the decision makers are hearing from the people with lived experience on what it is that they need and what they want. Because, you know, as we're putting dollars out towards this work, as we're putting teams out to do this work, how are we hearing their voice at that level? And how is the people at that level truly hearing them, capturing that information and acting on it? So it's not just having them there and hearing it, but it's actually capturing the information and saying, okay, if this is what we heard, do we need to shift from what we originally thought? Do we need to make some of that? And that trickles down, right? So even when we're having in community or in regions, right, the funders looking at that and they're getting funding, say, from Reaching Home or wherever they're getting money, and they're getting that money. Are they putting proposals out that just say intensive case managers or frontline support workers or outreach? Or are they intentionally asking for people with lived experience to be on those teams? So I think there's a whole shift in the way we're thinking, and it's not just about money, but there is politics involved. And then we get back to where my presentation is, how are we including the people with lived experience on our team in an intentional, respectful way?
And as I mentioned in my presentation, you know, talking about the word peer in reference to people who lived experience of homelessness. And Carrie and I were talking about this. The word pure, you know, means one of equal standing. And I think, you know, when you mention the word peer, it seems to come in at a lower level than anybody else. When you talk, oh yeah, we're bringing in a peer support. Okay, well, that person is always seen as something less. And, you know, we are peers to our participants in the program, and we're peers to the homeless people experiencing homelessness, and we're peers to other people who live experience. But we're also peers to our coworkers. Except, you know, one of the barriers that you're talking about is that acceptance of being a peer to our coworkers and to those around us who are working for the same cause. And I think once we get over that barrier, I can honestly say it doesn't exist everywhere, thank goodness. And there are many organizations that really do accept peers as peers, but in many organizations it's still not there. And so we need to come to a level of acceptance. And you know, I'll go back to what we were just talking about earlier. And the National Housing Council, when it was formed, it was put into legislation that lived experience needed to be a part of the structure of the council. And yet, for some reason, it's the only category of people that were on the council that was not included. And so, and you know, why was that? We can always ask, why was that? Well, yeah, I think it just simply because the acceptance of the value of people who live experience is not there yet. And, you know, we have to keep working on that aspect of things. And once we gain that total acceptance, that we'll be there. I truly believe that we are gonna, and we are getting there now. The federal government has put lived experience at the top of their agenda in working with the National Housing Strategy and issues of poverty. So, you know, we're getting there. But as Carrie said, there is a shift. It's just taken a long time to get that shift to be put into place. Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Al. Thanks, Carrie. There's a couple of questions here. We have one from Alexi, and Alexi says, any advice on figuring out your own unconscious biases? Example, education, introspection, conversations, listening, etc. And how to support others in acknowledging that they themselves have unconscious biases.
We all have them. I have unconscious biases, and I check myself a lot because I speak on this subject matter, and if I can't you know, truly hold myself to a higher standard, then what business do I have talking about it? We all have them, and you know what it is just a matter of asking yourself the question: do I really believe this? Do I is this something that I want to, when I'm talking to that person or that group of people, that demographics, do I really, do I want them to think the same way about me? It comes down to what your own value is too. And I think that if we can put ourselves, again, the biggest word in the English language is empathy. If we can give that empathy to a different group level or a different person, then and ask the question, how would I like it if they thought that about myself? And it happens all the time, you know. I hear from healthcare workers because they're exceptionally poor. And have a lot of unconscious biases towards patients, but you know, there's a recognition that they are that way, and that we're going to change it. But it has to be an everyday conscious issue. And you know, I grew up in a very judgmental background, with a father being a Mennonite pastor and all that religious stuff, and so I grew up intentionally not being that way, or trying not to be that way. But every once in a while, I still have to catch myself thinking about different people in a different way. And so check yourself every single day. And if you're having that kind of thought creep into your mind, bring it back to yourself and ask, you know, how would you feel if they thought that way about you?
And I think too, there's a quote that I often think of, and it's from Elvis Presley. And he said, values are like fingerprints. We all have them, and we leave them all over everything we do. And biases are very similar. And, you know, for me, in that person-centered perspective, I'm always looking at, when someone comes to me and says something, if that's like a trigger for me, or it's kind of ticking me off, I stop and go, I wonder what's important to them right now. Right away, we start thinking about our feelings and how that made us feel. And I'll stop myself and go, okay, before I answer this, where are they coming from? What's important to them? And really hearing them. And 9 times out of 10, it makes me change my perspective. And when I'm doing that work, and I can sit there and go, okay, I actually didn't know that, or I actually didn't think they were going to come back with that. And how does that change the way I think? But it has to be done intentionally, because otherwise we just go what's natural to us all the time. And we react to things in our environment. We react to things in our work. We come up with ideas and solutions, and we tend to be very, very solution focused, and we go that way. But if we take a minute to pause, we take a minute to take a breath and go, what's their perspective? Why are they reacting this way? Why is their behavior coming this way? What's important to that person right now? And if I don't know, can I ask them? So I'm really not understanding your perspective. Can you share with me so that I really understand what you're saying? And we start to change the way we think. When we start to change the way that we think, we start to change the way we work. But it is intentionally taking a breath and taking time to look at things different. Because if we don't, we'll just continue to react.
I have a couple of questions, and we only have about 2.5 minutes left. So I'm going to try to put them together, or at least address one of them. So Stephanie actually brought up the comment that they've heard the use of the term lived expertise versus lived experience. Also in this space, it has been addressed, like some organizations call it, say, first voice advocates as well. That's another term that people use as well. And I think it's just something that organizations or people just own, whichever term they want to be described as. That being said, here's one last question from Marguerite, who says, how do you preserve the peer perspective for the peer role without inadvertently creating division from the rest of the team?
Carrie, go ahead.
One of the things that I like to do is, it's called roles and responsibilities. And we sit down as a team and we define those together so that we really clearly see what everybody's job is and where do we have overlap, right? And how do we ensure that the peer is meant to be the peer, but also a very valued member of the team. And it's an exercise that we go through together, and I use it in a lot of my training, and agencies have asked me to come in and help them to do that. But we define that together as a team and what that looks like for each and every team, and where is there overlap? And if it starts to slip, how do we come back to that? And because it's documented, and take a look at that and go, okay, because we really need to ensure that the peer is being valued and coming from that peer perspective to support people. And so it's just a tool that it helps us to kind of check our work, see where we're at, and stay to the fidelity of what we're doing here.
And you know, I think the best team is a team with the Bachelor of Social Works, the master's degree, and the PhD working alongside the person with lived experience, with the LE behind their name. I think it's really important that is strived for. You know, the lines between peers and others are sometimes blurred because of the roles aren't clearly defined. I think having a clearly, as Carrie said, having a clearly defined roles set up and a clearly defined role management really helps. And again, communication. Communication is the biggest thing. I've been in situations where communication was not so good and things just, you know, unraveled. So I think having clearly defined roles and communication between everybody between your team members as well as your administration is the key to everything.
Great. Thank you both so much. Thanks, Carrie and Al, for your presentation.
Well, thank you for your work. Thank you for your work.
We're out of time, and enjoy the rest of the conference, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, Carrie.